ASTRA Knights of Veda feels like it has put all the attention and care into the wrong areas of the game. You sometimes get the impression that a game had a promising framework, but it focused on chasing trends instead of carving out a path for itself. ASTRA had 2 years to impress players, but now that time has come to an end. This video was uploaded at 3 AM Universal Time on June 26, which was the exact time and date this game shut down. My name is Psyche, and welcome to an end-of-service review on a gacha game that's no longer available. This means I will be releasing the last piece of content on the game while it was still alive. So let's take a closer look at ASTRA Knights of Veda and see where its potential lied and what exactly went wrong. In the midst of me changing all the is's to was's on the ASTRA wiki, let's go through some logistics. The developer is a Korean company called Flint, whose name was changed at some point, and their previous project was one called Dragon Blaze. And ASTRA was meant to be the sequel, but its name was changed at some point during development. This game supposedly took 7 years to make, and it seems they won't be recuperating the costs of that investment anytime soon. The game launched in April of 2024, so its lifespan ran for just over 2 years. Surprisingly enough, IGN reviewed the game, which usually doesn't happen unless the gacha is extremely big in its scale. Something to keep in mind is that I have to make these end-of-service videos with an assumption in mind, that the game did something bad to warrant being shut down. After all, a good game should continue to live on and thrive. It's like if you see a homeless person on the streets. You would naturally assume that they did something wrong to warrant being homeless. Of course, there could very well be extraneous factors that were out of that person's control, but this would be most people's views on homeless people. It's definitely possible that a gacha game had something that was out of its control when the game itself showed promise, causing it to shut down prematurely. But thinking that a game caused its own demise is a natural assumption to make. So, ASTRA likely has a number of things it messed up on, or has done poorly over the course of a long time to result in its stagnation and eventual shutdown. So I originally actually wanted to potentially cover ASTRA as a long review, which is why I had an account where I played for like an hour around a year ago before the game even announced it was closing. Back when the game launched, it was also not the smoothest, where people claimed that the gacha rates were weirdly stingy, that it didn't carry over, and was missing quality of life features. To be fair, you can expect some jank when a product is first released and patch it over time, so let's see if any of its problems were smoothed out. Before talking about the game, once you get a peek of what it's like, you will notice that this game feels incredibly Genshin-coded. From its story, progression to gacha system, many of it will feel reminiscent of it, as it was likely made during the time when Genshin still held the throne in gacha gaming by a large margin, and they probably wanted to reuse some of its ideas in this game. The story follows you, an unnamed knight, on the way alongside your comrades to defeat someone called Magnus the Mad King. You're faced with the brutal reality of war, and alongside those that have also made it to the final room, Magnus seems to have situated himself atop a mountain of zombified bodies, and he evolves to a giant grotesque form and scatters a pollen that seems to zombify what's left of the rebels. Then, when you're about to get eaten, a mysterious goddess appears, dispels the zombies, snatches a crystal-like thing from your body, and teleports you to a different realm. She explains that your physical body is lost, but she will reconstruct you to be the master of the book, making you the chosen one with special abilities to draw from the powers of other heroes. The goddess introduces herself as Veda ASTRA and says that you would go across the land to gather pieces of her to restore her full powers. She manifests herself as a chibi mascot to aid you on your journey, whose personality suspiciously resembles that one mascot from that game that everyone loves. This is where your new identity is formed, and you begin in a humble town in your adventures. You might be thinking, based on the intro cutscenes, this is kinda dark. If the rest of the game's theme can match this, ASTRA could be a pretty cool dark fantasy setting to feel immersed in. Well, I'm here to tell you that the dark tone doesn't exactly carry over to the rest of the story. To me, it feels like they were banking on the shock factor to impress you with how different it is. While the tone of it somewhat keeps up with what's established in the intro, it never quite matches it one-to-one. While in town and on side journeys, the tone is more uplifting and casual. Though to be fair, I don't think it's advantageous for a gacha game to constantly have dark and depressing stories. Since it's a game that's designed to make you log in every day, you probably don't want to see muted gray colors and everyone suffering around you. As for the gameplay, it plays like a side-scrolling action RPG. I used to play the hell out of Castle Crashers when I was a kid, so in a way, I did personally take an initial liking to the gameplay. You can do a normal attack, perform a skill on cooldown, and an ult that's charged by attacking and other means. You can dodge or do a power attack, which expends stamina that's displayed as a ring below your avatar. If you try to dodge or use a skill while it's not available, then be prepared for Not Paimon to constantly remind you that you're not ready. You can fit up to 4 members onto a team, all with their different elements and classes, and there's a character switching mechanic with a short cooldown, just like Genshin. You can also activate a power boost mode in which characters matching the element of the boost will get their skill and ult cooldowns dramatically reduced for a time. To the game's credit, there is a squad mode that lets you have all 4 units on field at a time during a stage, with an additional button to call them to your location for some tactical maneuvers. When I first started out, I was actually surprised that dodging and planning to use your skills matter to some degree, so it's not just the left-click simulator where you can button mash to victory. The story campaign is laid out across many different regions, so progressing enough past it will naturally advance the story. The game clearly presents itself as a side-scrolling action RPG, except the story segments are heavily staggered out by generic levels where you fight the same enemies. Some people may claim that the atmosphere and gameplay of the game makes it a successor to other side-scroller RPGs like Dragon's Crown, but I personally disagree. Making a game to be monetized around gacha mechanics is a conscious choice that a developer makes, and doing so changes the goals of what they're trying to achieve with the game. I think if an IP suddenly announces that a sequel or spin-off will be a gacha game, you should never treat it the same way as the non-gachas. This game is less so a successor to Dragon's Crown, and more so a 2D dark fantasy version of Genshin Impact. As per usual with gacha games, since it's designed as a game to be played every day, you want to put in some time-gating features to ensure players don't progress too quickly. The first time you beat a campaign stage will not cost any stamina, but subsequent runs do. Some of the items for account progression will drop in these levels, so it's natural that you want to spend stamina every day running them. Luckily, there's an auto-battle feature where the game can just control itself for you. This works for stages you've already beat, but something that surprised me is that there's no sweep mechanic in the game. It's there for a few select modes, just not the normal farming stages. There is a way to convert your stamina into a more condensed version, so running the level once will get you a reward multiplier. Even so, I found it a little strange there's no easier way, as sometimes you just have to go AFK and wait until it's done farming everything. It also does that thing where your characters are not allowed to be leveled past a certain point until you've achieved a high enough player level and have done a quest. Where have we seen that before? Once you level a party to the maximum of what the game lets you at the time, then story stages stop becoming a challenge, and actually come off as rather monotonous until you get to the next story cutscene. I actually just started autoing in the background while I did other things. It really begs the question, if the game has a lot of elements of being an auto-battler, then why not make the quality of life features to match? Just give me a sweep feature for any stage and let me set the amount of stamina I want to spend. I get the impression that the game wants to be seen as an ARPG with complex mechanical gameplay, but instead is a glorified auto-battler some of the time. After I used some selectors to get some 5-star characters, the challenge just subsided immediately. I can see a valid argument that a gacha game should make the rarer characters stronger, and that the starter team given should not be that strong, so that players can feel the benefits of pulling on the gacha more. Now, there are other game modes, and I'm sure when you approach late game with challenging content, you do have to do some theory crafting and learning team rotations. Though I just can't imagine that mindset being the norm for most of your time spent within this game. While this weird blend of both ARPG and gacha isn't by itself bad, it just feels like it's afraid to go too hard in one direction. Alright, so as soon as I start covering account progression, you'll see just how tightly this game ties itself to gacha games rather than the ARPG side. For a bit of disclaimer, I played this a few weeks before the shutdown, and the progression system may have been skewed since normal events weren't running, and I got some free stuff every day since they don't really have a reason to be stingy anymore. Every Knight of Veda can be leveled using the XP books, and the Ascension stages are at 20 and 40 for the first two, then every 10 levels after. The weapons work the same way. There's a relic system of 5 slots, in which there are set bonuses when you equip 2 or 4 pieces from the same set. Goes without saying, there's also random substats that you can roll on said gear. The character dupe system goes up to 6, and you can level their normal attack, skill, or ult. To state the obvious, this is evidently how Genshin runs things too, but the resemblance doesn't stop there once we get to the gacha portion. After you start going through these side stories and unlocking different features and modes, that's when your eyes will be open to a system that makes it even more troublesome to manage than the thing it copied from. If you talk to this NPC in town, he gives you another avenue of upgrades in which you can use these scrolls to roll an additional substat on your weapon, with the possibilities listed in-game, and every stat has a range it can land on. If you don't get the stat you want, you can spend even more scrolls to try again, and this increases the amount of gold needed per roll. This enchantment mechanic isn't actually present in the weapons menu tab, so you have to go into town in order to interact with it. In addition to the weapon and the 5 relic slots, there's also 3 more slots for accessories. These also have to be leveled and may contain random stats. There is a transmog system where you can use the appearance of any other weapon you have instead of its original one, so at least that's pretty cool. Now, I actually had some fun when I played, and I wanted to see how far I can get in my account before it all went away, and maybe this wasn't the best idea. I also discovered additional progression systems involving weapon slots and their respective gems. You can use a currency to randomly roll a slot alongside the RNG enhancement for weapons, then you can create a gem that can be placed into that slot. There's randomness in rolling what kind of slot it is, and there's another layer where the gems themselves can have a variety of stats. When I found out that you can do this on your accessory slots too, that's when I would have called it quits if I was playing this game for real. You have to go to this nightmare dimension to access the farming stages for the relics, and there's also passive generation of some common materials like some idle games out there. Stamina is this boots currency that goes up to 240, while farming campaign levels cost 10 per round. You can condense 120 of it into these special boots and get a reward multiplier. However, for some reason, if there's a double drop event happening, then you don't get the bonus. If you get more drops for 16 rounds of the level per day, then you actually have to repeat the level for 16 times while in auto mode. Since you want the grind to be as fast and efficient as possible, you can just borrow a broken friend support unit and clear it quickly. Ascension materials for characters and weapons are farmed via the various levels in the campaign, and there's a synthesis vendor in town to convert lower rarity materials to higher ones. You know that weird gimmick in Genshin where certain characters have a chance to boost the crafting rate when you synthesize something? Yeah, it's here too, and the bonuses are exactly the same. The dupe levels all give passive bonuses. I have no way of confirming how impactful these are, and there's also a refinement mechanic for weapons where I can go to +5. So before I get started talking about the Gamba, as the game is shutting down, the poll economy won't be reflective of what it's like if the game was still alive. So I'll mainly be critiquing it at a functional level. You got the typical 3 rarity tiers, where the blues are the trash weapons no one wants, the purples being the SRs, and the golds the SSRs. There's characters and weapons for both of the latter rarities. The gacha animation has you smashing open a box and getting the stuff inside. There's a short cutscene of a comet-like thing traveling in the sky before getting to your result. And hang on, even this is giving me some deja vu. Taking a peek at the Gamba rates, the odds for a 5-star character is 0.6%. My first thought was, really? In a game like this? In my opinion, this is way too low. I can see that the quality is quite high for a side-scrolling ARPG, but I would personally put the rates at 2% or at the very least 1%. The 0.6% and the 160 gems per poll economy are clearly copied from Genshin's design philosophy. The saving grace is that the rate up chance is 100%, but this wasn't actually like this when the game first launched. It was a 50-50 just like that game everyone loves, and the shady bit is that the 50-50 didn't carry over to the next banner. So if you lost the coin flip, waited for the next banner, you can lose it again. Even now, the pity buildup does not get shared across other currently running banners. Given that the rates are extremely low, be prepared for the vast majority of your polls to look like this. Also, the 100% rate up chance doesn't even apply to some of the banners. I got spooked on this selectable rate up banner, and the rules still state the rate as 50% clear as day. The total pity is 90, and this extends to the weapon banner too. You get a slight drop boost at 0.8% instead. Goes without saying, every character will have a signature that works the best on them. Now, the low rates can be forgiven if there's a generous supply of Gamba coins, which I'm not entirely sure of since the game is shutting down and the in-game economy won't be at its normal state. I personally do think one of the reasons people noped out of the game when it launched was the low drop chance. Genshin has truly done some harm to normalizing certain practices, and ASTRA likely thought that if it works for MiHoYo, it would work for them too. I've seen a few other cases of similar things happening, so hopefully this will be a lesson learned from them. I can't comment much on the cash shop since most of it is disabled and there's no battle pass running anymore. Much of it looks quite typical, though I'm quite curious to find that there weren't any premium skins or something. That's usually something gacha games can do to monetize on the side without appearing too predatory. And with the unique art style the game has, I think some people would have been interested in it. If you want to sum up my thoughts on the game in one sentence, great art, okay story, everything else is mid. I overall had a decent time with the game before it went under, and in normal circumstances I wouldn't have had problems recommending this game for people to try. I just want to clarify that you should not see this game as an ARPG, but a gacha game with ARPG elements. I think if you look within the community that knows the game better, there's also people touting that poor management had to do with the game's downfall. I think the game didn't originally start out on the best footing, but I mean, if they can be receptive to feedback and slowly improve the game, it can still make a comeback. In this case though, that ship has sailed. I definitely think a game can borrow mechanics and systems from popular games as long as they don't complicate the hell out of it and it feels unique by itself. From what I've gathered, the many layers to its progression via gear and relics just makes it feel worse to manage than what it copied it from. Coupled with the weirdly stingy rates that left a poor first impression, and I can understand why people didn't want to stick around. The game announced its server's closure in late April, which was conveniently a few weeks after its second anniversary. I guess it didn't garner enough traction during that time as a last-ditch effort. Is there an offline mode to preserve the story, atmosphere, and music? Nope, this game is gone. Part of me thinks this would work great if it was converted to a single-player game with a free-form progression system, although that's definitely not happening at this point. Some of the character designs look quite nice, but Astra will be the next one to enter the gacha graveyard. Let me know if you think Astra Knights of Veda was a Genshin trend chaser, or it was a misunderstood gem. For more content on gacha games, subscribe to the channel. I hope to slowly phase out sponsors in place of Patreon support, so you can pitch in for $2 a month over there. As always, thank you for watching, be sure to spend moderately, and have fun out there.